Okay, good morning again, everyone. I see that we now have nearly 40 people online, and I'd just like to say welcome to you all. For those of you who don't know me, I'm David Abbott. I'm with SDD here in Noumea, and I'm just going to act as the MC for the commencement of this meeting this morning. So welcome again to everybody. It's a unique meeting. We haven't tried to do this before, so I hope that the systems will work, and I hope that everybody is able to connect. My colleague Mike Sharp is here controlling everything, and if we have any problems, hopefully he'll be able to solve them and get everyone connected if you're having trouble with the Zoom connection. So just a few housekeeping issues before we get underway. The first thing is that I'd like to inform you that we're recording this meeting, and we will be able to then put out a meeting report in due course. So just to let you know that the meeting is being recorded. I'd also ask you all to mute your microphones and turn off your video cameras to save bandwidth. Unless you're actually speaking. If you want to turn it on when you're speaking, that's fine. But otherwise, I suggest that you turn your videos off. So that would save our bandwidth. I'd say also ask you all to write your names in the chat page so that we have a record of everyone who is on board. There are rather too many for us to go around and ask everyone to introduce. So if you could just write your names in the chat page, that will give us a record of who's on board, and we can make sure that we keep you informed of any further matters on when we start to follow up. Also, if you have any questions as we go through this morning, could you write those in the chat too, and we'll keep a record of those as we go through, and we'll then be able to pose those to the presenters at the appropriate time. There will be a time to ask questions after session one, but as I say, we'll try and put those all onto the chat page so that we can keep a record of them, and we can deal with them in that way. If you have a presentation, please feel free to share that on your screen. And if you want Mike to help you with that, I'm sure he'll be able to do so. We're going to start off with a few words of introduction from as it were, the initiator of this great meeting, Ipia Gadabu, who is the government statistician for Nauru, and who is also the current chair of the Heads of Planning and Statistics meeting. For those of you who are wondering what's happened to the HOPS meeting this year, because of the pandemic, we have decided to postpone it, and we will be aiming to hold the next HOPS meeting sometime early in 2021. We haven't forgotten about it. We still regard it as extremely important, and we will be convening it as soon as we can make sure that everyone is able to participate and hopefully attend on a face-to-face basis. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Ipia to open our meeting for us. Ipia, over to you. Thank you. Well, it seems that we have our first technical hitch. We seem to have lost Ipia in Nauru. So perhaps, are you there, Ipia? Okay, well, let's quickly move on. I'll hand over to he's online. Ipia, please, can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there we go. Okay, over to you.
Hi, Ipia.
Hello, everyone. Good to hear from everyone again after such a long hiatus. But yeah, I'd just like to say thank you, everyone, for joining. As you well know, this is just an opportunity for us to catch up. I mean, there's a lot of uncertainties between all of us, most of us actually, and we'd like to probably sit down today and hear from the experts and what's been happening out there, and perhaps share our experiences in the later sessions. So again, this will be just a short opening. I would like to thank all the development partners, including SDD, for their efforts in making this meeting possible. I hope everyone will enjoy today and also be better informed at the end of the day. And also, if you have any questions, I think everyone would, as I myself do as well. So again, thank you everyone for joining in this discussion today. I think that's all for me. I'll give it back to the MC.
Thank you very much indeed, Ipia. It's great to have you on board and all the other government statisticians around the region. I'd now like to invite Epeli to just say a few words. Epeli, our director here at STD.
Thank you, David, and welcome to everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. We've seen that there's a lot of interest on what needs to be discussed during this roundtable, and we're very encouraged by the number of people who have attended. Thanks to EPA for suggesting this meeting, and it sits well with what we have been discussing as well about the need to coordinate the activities that are being carried out in the region, just to ensure that we minimize all these duplication, as well as a better use of resources amongst the development partners in the countries. And of course, I'm sure a lot of the countries would want to know what is happening around the region, and then to learn more about the new modalities of data collection, which will be shared during this roundtable discussion. So we're really thankful to all of you, and we look forward to a lot of discussions and information sharing, so that we could better plan on how we could effectively work out the best means of gathering the much needed data that we all require to measure the impact of COVID, which is affecting all of us. So welcome all, and I thank you once again for your participation.
Thank you very much indeed, Epeli. If we can now all just turn to the agenda. As you can see, we're going to open this morning's session with a few presentations from some of our key development partners who are already undertaking socioeconomic assessments. So I'd like to first of all invite Kristen Himmelane, who is with the World Bank and who is masterminding the high-frequency phone monitoring surveys that are currently being undertaken in Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. And I'll hand over to Kristen, who is joining us from Washington. So over to you, Kristen. Thank you.
Thanks, David, and good morning or good afternoon to everyone participating on the call. For those of you that don't know me, I am Kristen Himmelane. I am a senior economist and statistician at the World Bank. I am the task team leader for our Pacific Poverty and Equity Program, which means basically I'm a statistician and applied microeconomist. In addition to being the task team leader for the Pacific, I am also the global co-chair on the World Bank's High Frequency Mobile Phone Survey Initiative. So as background, the World Bank is rolling out these high-frequency mobile phone surveys in about 100 countries globally to measure the impacts of COVID-19. So I'm a technical expert and sampling lead and also the global co-coordinator there. So those are kind of the two relevant hats I wear for today's discussion. So just a little bit of I'm going to take you through a couple of slides that talk about the work that we have. We have our two priority countries in terms of quickly mobilizing are Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, and that is basically in terms of our portfolio and our engagement. Those are our two key partners for us in terms of the number of core and the work that we're doing. So we have a questionnaire. It's 15 minutes long. It covers a number of topics. I'm happy to share it with you if you haven't seen it. It covers basic household information, some knowledge of COVID-19 and government response questions, a section on labor and income loss, and we ask this both to the respondent and to the household head if the respondent is not the household head. We also ask about food access and food security, coping strategies, re-access to the household head only, access to health service, public trust and security, and assets and well-being. And in terms of the language of the questionnaire, it's written in English and translated into Pidgin, so the interviewer has the choice of which language to conduct the survey in. Our fieldwork, so our fieldwork in PNG, we are using Digicel as our implementing partner. They launched on June 18th, and my count as of close of business yesterday was 1,217 completed and approved surveys to date. The Solomon Islands launched 2 days later, and we're working there with Tebet Research. We have 256 completed and approved surveys to date. And we anticipate all interviews to be completed by June 30th. That's the end of our fiscal year. And so we are hoping that the data will be delivered by then. One of the key aspects of these surveys is actually we really crunch them pretty quickly. So I've already started on the calculations using these partial data sets that we have. We expect to, as soon as we get these surveys out of the field, it takes about a week for us to clean and write up the results. And then, we do have a little bit of an internal review process, and then we start with sharing the preliminary results. Thinking about the frequency of our surveys, we are planning 4 rounds after the one that we have in the field now. We'll conduct these roughly quarterly, and I have to put in funding permitting because while there's a lot of interest internally, I don't quite have the money in my bank account yet. But I'm pretty confident that we will be able to do 4 more rounds in each of the 2 countries quarterly. The cost, probably shouldn't be sharing this if this is being recorded and posted somewhere, but I am anyway. In Papua New Guinea, we're looking at $55,000 US in terms of fieldwork cost, but since we're working with Digicel, it's a much more slim operation, so we have to provide some of our own internal technical assistance. So basically, we're handling sampling, weights, questionnaire design, programming of the survey solutions, software, exporting. So really, they're basically handling the implementation, and that's it. For the Solomon Islands, we're working with Tebet Research. There, it's a little bit more money. We're looking at $90,000 per round, but there it's a little bit more of a full service operation. Basically, I sent them the questionnaire. They said thank you, and I, periodically get data checks, but it's a very hands-off kind of arrangement. So, the difference in costing kind of reflects the difference in how much work is necessary from the team. Talking a little bit about the sampling and weights. Sample size, we're targeting 2,500 households per country, and we're looking national. The sample design, these are very simple. They're proportional to population size at the province level in Papua New Guinea, at least to the extent that we can be certain as to what those proportions are, as it's been quite a while since they've done a census. In the Solomon Islands, it's a little bit more of a mixed bag, and that's because if you go to the next point and look at the implementation strategy, in PNG, we're doing random digit dialing, which means that the Digicel computer does something and it spits out a phone number. The machine tries to connect. If a person picks up, it'll connect it to an operator. In the Solomon Islands, it's a little bit different. They're using a combination of kind of a list that they curate and maintain for their work, and also random digit dialing. All surveys are conducted remotely. We have no live interviewing, and they are all targeting mobile phones. And that's because it's becoming increasingly apparent that when you include landlines, you end up with a lot of businesses and fax machines. And we are specifically here targeting households and individuals. The weighting strategy, I promised I wouldn't get too much into the weeds of the technical discussion, but I think to cover just a couple of important points for people that may be considering doing this in their own country, you really do need to base it on a recent national household survey. And so in Papua New Guinea, we're using the 2016-18 DHS, and then in the Solomon Islands, we're using the 2015 DHS. We'll reweight based on a certain set of characteristics that we will capture in our phone survey. This would be the sex of the household head, some age categories, education level, occupation, and then geographic characteristics, province, district, urban-rural status. And the reason that we need to do this is because these surveys are biased. I mean, we know from the literature, we know from experience, we know from the other 100 countries that we're working in that mobile phone ownership is not random. It's you end up oversampling men, you end up oversampling urban populations, you end up oversampling educated populations, and you end up oversampling the employed. And this is just a characteristic of the instrument, and so we use fairly complicated reweighting techniques to try to mitigate that. The other thing that's really important is that with these surveys, you need to benchmark them to a welfare distribution. As I mentioned, we're using the DHS surveys. That means that we are collecting all of the information that is used to calculate their wealth index in the DHS, and so I will be able to map these surveys onto the wealth index distribution from the DHS surveys, and that's important because let's say, for example, we're missing the bottom 20%. It is not necessarily a deal breaker, in terms of, we can still collect a lot of good information, but in terms of presenting our results and being able to talk to policymakers about what these results mean, we have to know who our respondents are. So this is really important to be able to benchmark to a known welfare distribution and include that in your reweighting. It doesn't necessarily need to be a DHS. It just so happens that the two most recent national surveys in the two countries we're working are DHS, but we use something called SWIFT, which is a rapid imputation method. If you have a recent heist, for example, or if you have a continuous consumption measure or continuous income measure. So there's a lot of different ways that we can tackle this technically. It just so happens that in both of the examples that I'm discussing today, we're using the DHS. Talking a little bit about piloting, obviously we did pilots prior to the launch of the fieldwork. I think a pleasant surprise of the pilots was everything worked pretty smoothly in terms of the call centers. The unpleasant surprise is that I spent 3 consecutive days hacking the length of the questionnaire back. When I drafted the questionnaire, I've done a few of these, so I had a pretty good guess that we would be about 15 minutes. I was very far off. The initial first day piloting results were 43 minutes to complete the base questionnaire in PNG and 23 minutes to complete the base questionnaire in the Solomon Islands. These questionnaires are near identical. The PNG questionnaire is slightly longer, but in 5 questions longer. So what we were seeing is that it was taking a long time in Papua New Guinea. So what we did is we had to drop some questions, and then still didn't get us down quite far enough in Papua New Guinea, so we're doing randomization. So half of the respondents will answer the knowledge of COVID-19 section, and half will answer the public security and trust section. And that's so that we could keep all of our questions. We'll just have a smaller sample size to analyze those results. The last thing I want to mention is collaboration. It may not have been true historically, but this incarnation of the World Bank really does try to be collaborative. On the design phase, we reached out to the UN system and the other development partners, and I'd like to say a big thanks to Chris Ryan and Chale in the Fiji UN office for really facilitating that discussion and that feedback. But what we discovered is, as I mentioned, the questionnaire was already very long, and so we have very limited scope to add questions because of the time constraints. So the potential solution that we arrived at is to revisit the same households with a follow-up survey. I think this is something that we do with large national household surveys sometimes, and it works quite well in phone surveys. What we use is the first round of the data collection helps us target, And also we develop the weights, we collect the information needed to match the respondents to the distribution. So you don't have to do those kind of startup costs that you would if you were just doing a fresh survey. We're moving forward with this with UNICEF, both in Papua New Guinea and the Solomon Islands. They will revisit subsamples of our total survey. It's targeted, so UNICEF and PNG will go back to households with children 0 to 5, and in Solomon Islands, it's a wider survey at 0 to 17. And they will ask an intensive set of questions on child and maternal health. We'll assist them in calculating the weights based on our calculations, and we will produce a joint report with them. We've also had preliminary discussions with UN Women. They have kind of a similar interest in doing follow-up to compare sex disaggregated statistics. So that's what I have now. I've been warned that I will be cut off if I go over 5 minutes. So I apologize if I was speaking too quickly. I'm trying to stay within the bounds, and I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Kristen. That was really useful to be brought up to date with these ongoing surveys, because we are hoping that through the experience that you have had with PNG and the Solomons, that we will be able to roll out further surveys in a number of other countries as we move forward. So it's going to be very exciting to see the results that you get from these surveys over the coming weeks. I think we are actually a little bit behind time. Maybe what we'll do is we'll hold your questions until we have the discussion tomorrow. Would that be okay with you? Because I know that you have another engagement very shortly.
I do. My colleague Jim is also online. He can probably answer many of the questions. If there's anything kind of super technical, I'm happy to follow up tomorrow.
David, it's Offa here from States, New Zealand.
Yes, Offa.
Yeah, I think we have raised two very critical questions, and I wonder if I mean to delay it for tomorrow when we have everybody. I think it's really good to understand the position of the World Bank and the UN in terms of coordination. That's what we want to hear this morning. What's the actual coordination done so far to have a coordinated survey in the Pacific? And also the next question, if the NSO are expected to participate and to help, what budget allocation is given to them? Those are two very critical questions that I think we need to hear some answer today from Christine. Thank you.
Kristen, can you very quickly answer the question from Offa?
Sure. So it varies a little bit. We haven't had much engagement with the NSO in PNG, to be honest. I think they're kind of going through some organizational change right now. And so, you know, our discussions have been a little bit more high level in terms of, you know, working with the permanent secretary and the Prime Minister's office. We have, in Solomon Islands, we've met with Douglas. We've had a great conversation and some good feedback from him. He reviewed the survey instrument. We talked about data sharing, but sort of the way it is here in the two countries that we're working, there is sort of, we're not working directly with the NSO. So, you know, we're happy to share materials if individual NSOs, or actually more likely given how these go, line ministries, have certain questions. We want to work with them in order to get those questions into the questionnaire. But we're not implementing with the NSOs. And that's different in different parts of the world. I would say, you know, of the 40-something surveys that we're doing in sub-Saharan Africa, more than half of them are being implemented by the NSOs themselves. And many of the NSOs have experience in doing this type of work. So it's a little bit of a different model. I think it really depends on the country. If we have a country engagement where the NSO wanted to take the lead in terms of being the implementing partner, I mean, we would find a way to do that. It's a little bit difficult if they've never done it before because of the travel restrictions, but I think we're open to trying, and we hire them just like a survey firm. right? So I mentioned that we paid, or we are paying Digicel $55,000 US to implement the survey. It would be the same thing as if we were implementing with an NSO. So I think, you know, the PNG and Solomon Islands are perhaps not typical of the engagement that we have globally, but they are a little bit closer to typical of what we have in the East Asia Pacific region. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you very much, Kristen. And just to add to that offer, I think, as Kristen has said, PNG and the Solomons are obviously the first two countries, and we're learning from what is being done there. And again, as Kristen has said, every country will be different. So when we eventually come to roll this out in other countries across the region, we will be making sure that we engage with the NSOs much more closely, as we always do at SDD. So I think that we shouldn't necessarily take PNG and the Solomons as the model, but they will provide guidance to us as we move forward in engaging with other countries as they as we hope to move forward with these surveys. So I hope that covers the point now, because we are running a little bit behind time. So Kristen, thank you. I'm sure there will be other questions, and perhaps we can deal with those later to allow you to get on to your other appointment. What I'd like to do now is to hand over to Philip at UNICEF for a brief presentation on what UNICEF is currently doing in the region. Philip, over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So I will just shortly present on what we are doing in terms of Mix and Mix Plus. So UNICEF has been rolling out a mix in the region since 2018, and just a short introduction. Mix is a multiple indicator cluster survey that has been developed in the 90s, and so far it has been done in more than 115 countries, and more than 340 surveys have been implemented. And currently we're working on round 6 of Mix that has been rolled out in 2017, and survey covers around Gs and has the largest number of SDGs that can be covered through it. So idea, while two things were happening at the same time, we have been piloting something called Mix Plus in Belize, and right now, as all the travel is being suspended for all our data collection in the field, we have been in discussions with some of the stats offices here in the region on how we can move from Mix to introducing the Mix Plus. And Mix Plus is done not as a face-to-face survey, but as a telephone survey. It's introduced in the countries where we have already finalized the survey, and during that data collection we have also asked for cell phones or land phones of the households we have visited. So the main idea is to use Mix findings as a baseline for ongoing data collection through telephone survey that is Mix Plus. It has been tested in Belize, and it has a representative subsample of the households that were already included in the Mix survey in the country with their telephone numbers and consent to contact them. So based on the Mix sample, we would use a subsample for Mix Plus based on the phones that have already been collected and the issues that have already been discussed in terms of the data on regional and area data, as well as the wealth index data is connected to the baseline survey, so those issues do not represent an obstacle in implementation of Mix Plus. The phones are made from a call center, or the interviewers who are hired do those calls in the evenings from their homes using the smart data collection management system. And the implementing agencies are the national statistical offices that have already done the mixed survey. So idea in terms of data collection is to collect it monthly or fortnightly. And the questionnaires are not as comprehensive as data that is collected in mix. So we try to keep data collection short, up to 10 to 15 minutes. And the advantages that we see in terms of the data collection is that we are getting the longitudinal data, and we can compare that data with the baseline that is created through the mixed survey. We can collect data on specific program indicators that have already been collected, and so we can use it as a monitoring tool. It can be used as an opinion polling tool, and it's very useful in this COVID-19 situation as a crisis monitoring tool. So we collect data through what we call waves or rounds of Mix Plus. Mix Plus usually doesn't take, it's not a one-off survey. It's usually takes at least 6 to 12 months to implement with the monthly or shorter interval data collection waves. And the idea is to try to monitor what is collected through the original survey, but also in Belize and in other countries that are rolling it out. It has also been used to collect data on COVID-19 as well. Because of this flexibility that MixPlus has, we are able to not only follow the specific questionnaires that are designed for follow-up or monitoring of data collected in the initial survey, but also we are able to integrate important issues for the national context in these one of these waves or multiple waves, and collect data on that as well. So that's how it's responsive to COVID-19. And what is also different is that there are no specific reports that are produced, but rather data is presented as a dashboard. So it's published relative time frame after the data collection has been done. Let's say if data collection takes 2 weeks, a week or a few 10 days after that, we will be able to produce a dashboard. I'll just show you how this is just a screenshot of the dashboard that has been produced for COVID-19 related questions in Belize. And it has just been integrated in one or two ways in the country, and I have just published. I'll just put a link there if somebody is interested, so that they can see how it looks like. And data is presented in Tableau, so that is the tool that is being used. In terms of the system that is used for data collection, because we only do this in countries where the survey has already been done. They use the same CS Pro kind of architecture that has been customized for data collection through the phone surveys. And one of the advantages that we see in this survey is that because of the respondents have already been asked for their phone numbers, they do expect to be contacted. Therefore, the response rates are much higher than in comparison to similar phone surveys. We are also in discussions with countries here in the region in rolling it out in the countries that have collected the phone numbers throughout Mix and implementing it now probably in Mix Plus. And because we have a few Mix surveys that are scheduled as soon as travel restrictions ease up and health situation has been deemed significantly improved in a way that we can continue fieldwork in countries that are going to do the original mix. We are expecting to collect phone numbers for those samples as well and use it as a tool to roll out Mix Plus in the coming surveys as well. And just in the end, in the interest of time, I'll just show some of the things that we are also looking at in terms of improvements to the mix itself due to risks such as COVID-19, and that's in terms of looking at using measurement tools that are not do not require physical contact. So instead of using the standard measuring boards, we are looking at different artificial intelligence tools that would be able to collect the biometric data. And also looking at how data can be collected in modes different than face-to-face data collection. So I hope this will provide sufficient information on what we are planning to do. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much indeed, Philippe. That's it's very interesting to know what UNICEF is doing. And as Kristen said, you're working closely with the World Bank to undertake these Mixed Plus surveys ultimately in PNG and the Solomons. So if we can quickly now move on to Andre from the World Food Programme and hear from him the work that is currently being done by WFP. So over to you, Andre.
Hi, thank you, David, for that introduction. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the organizers putting this together. If you will just bear with me, it'll be just a second. I just also wanted to remind guests that very keen to hear any questions or feedback you may have, and just remind you that you may post your question on the chat box so that we may better collect some of your thoughts as I go along and some of the other presenters go along. So let me just share with you my screen. Right, so WFP is currently running MVAM. MVAM is a mobile vulnerability analysis and mapping effort by WFP, which has been taken on going back to 2013 for reasons due to the complexities of on-the-ground data collection and assessments, and also leveraging existing 2G network penetration. In the past, it's been done through SMS, IVR, and various modalities. But at any rate, in the Pacific, MVAM is a high-frequency telephone interviews that allow us to track food security trends in time, over time, and allows us to pick out these trends at the national level in the Pacific. So the goal is to effectively guide decision making, and we're working in these countries through coordination, mainly through the food security clusters. So we'll first reach out to the national food security clusters. We did this, for example, with the regional cluster dating back to March, if I'm not mistaken, and conversations that have continued with national level food security clusters. We're also collaborating and coordinating with other partners, which are also listed here. EFAT, for example, which has been key in enabling us to connect with market actors and farmers. SPC, which also co-chairs the food security cluster, and FAO, as well as other partners that as well as other stakeholders who have collaborated and coordinated with us that I'm not able to get to at the moment, so my apologies. So we are reaching Fiji, Vanuatu, Samoa, Tonga, Solomon Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, and Marshall Islands. In Fiji, we've collected over 300 observations already. And so basically in the Pacific, we're collecting two different types of surveys. So one is a household level survey and the other one is a market survey. So as mentioned before, these are rounds made over time with 400 observations made per round or per month. And this is proportional to population size. And the sampling frame is derived from an already existing subscriber database that the call center already possesses. So it's a pretty standard approach to tapping into these contacts for households. In terms of the web-based surveys or the market surveys, I shall say, we are working with key stakeholder networks and reaching to participants within those networks through a purposive sampling approach and deriving some information on market functionality and the situation of specific supply chain actors. So essentially the call centers for the household level data and the market assessments that are made are processed into maps where relevant and then dashboards. The data collection for the household level survey is data on livelihoods, a food consumption score to discern the consumption by food group of households, which is weighted and then shown as a measurement to understand the situation, the overall situation, coping strategies for essential needs. There's also the market side of things, which I'd mentioned before, and that data is also collected by different modality. There's also a multi-dimensional deprivation index consisting of various different questions under health, food security, education, and living conditions. And there's questions on debt and remittances. So this is our overall schedule. Given the limited amount of time I have for the presentation, I'm happy to share the presentation with you so that you can also take a look at what we have here. In terms of reporting, this is an example sample dashboard from WFP Caribbean. We're able to use enterprise solutions to visualize the information. And so we are looking at different options we may have to do this. And in terms of a global snapshot, we are also able to tap into the hunger map. WFP headquarters MVAM is collecting information coming in from various countries to monitor the food security situation around the globe. So our hope is to tap into these various ways for visualizing information and reporting information. So in terms of what we're working on now, we're continuing to work with national partners on feedback for questionnaires. We are engaging government staff, mostly from Ministry of Agriculture. And in the mid to long term, we look forward to data sharing and further integration with other national and regional exercises, but also the ability to share this information on other platforms. Our aim is for this to support as a foundation for food security monitoring system, and we're looking to also provide more national level solutions once we do this national level snapshot, where we can have some of these discussions and use some of this data to begin discussions with the food security clusters of relevant countries, as well as the regional food security cluster, and integrate the results of the data for specific preparedness and response action. And this is just an overview of partners for MVAM in terms of methodology and review, the technology, and some of the key donors and sponsors that have been formed part of MVEM globally, but also in Pacific. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Andre. The three presentations we've heard so far have already focused on the household level. I'm now going to invite Raj from ILO to speak briefly about the work that ILO have been doing in terms of business surveys in the region. So Raj, over to you.
Thank you, David. Let me just quickly share my screen. So, 1 second. Can you see my screen, David?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, 1 second.
Bless you.
David, I'm having some difficulties in sharing my screen, but what I'll do, I'll share my presentation. But in the meantime, I'll just present from what I have. Is that fine with you?
Yes, that'll be fine, Raj. Yep.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, colleagues. For the ILO is currently taking a rapid assessment on the impact of COVID-19 on employment and businesses, as David has mentioned. So the survey that we are taking for the Pacific Island countries, as some of you may be aware, that for ILO we cover 11 member countries. So the idea of the survey is to support national tripartite committees to undertake rapid assessment on the effect of COVID-19 on employment and businesses. So when I mean tripartite, in the case for ILO, just because of the structure that we have, we work very closely with the employers, organizations in the country, and the unions, and mostly with the Ministry of Labor or the Ministry of Employment in many of the countries. The immediate object of the joint assessment and monitoring is to contribute to national level evidence-based COVID-19 recovery policies and programs prioritized by the tripartite. Also to target for stimulus package, effective and equitable donor investments, addressing specifically employees and workers' individual value propositions and informing ILO specific Office of Relevant Actions and programs that could be supported through this rapid assessment. In terms of the design of the survey, for now we have just completed Fiji and the report is being put together. So in the case for Fiji, we had worked very closely with the Fiji Trade Union Congress, with the employees, which was the Fiji Chamber of Commerce and Fiji Commerce and Employers Federation, and with the Ministry of Employment. The rapid assessment has been designed with the following principles, making sure that tripartite participation, engagement, and promotion of social dialogue is there from the beginning. Individual, and at the same time, we're also looking at the capacity of our tripartite partners, so that in the near future, if they have to take some sort of a similar survey, they're able to take the survey, and also that the results of the survey informs policy and program development. Of course, trying to maintain the margin of error as low as possible. As I've mentioned, in Fiji, the survey is almost completed. For Samoa, the survey is ongoing. We are planning to launch the surveys in Tonga, Tuvalu, Marshall Islands, and Palau soon, again with our tripartite partners. We are also in line for Tonga and Tuvalu. In Tuvalu, this will be jointly with IOM. ILO and ION will be joining this, doing the survey together. In PNG, we have kind of joined the UN survey For Solomon Islands, Kiribati, and we are still under discussions. And in Vanuatu, we understand that they will now be undertaking a PDNA. So we'll try to see how our questions could be included in the PDNA and how some of this information can be ascertained. I'll share quickly the Fiji experience so that we are all aware of what has been done, and this would be the modality we're trying to implement in the rest of the countries. So in Fiji, our survey started around April. The questionnaires were designed with the tripartite partners, the employees, workers, and the government. We had the assistance of the Fiji Bureau of Statistics in training of the enumerators, and then we reached out through the members of the unions to undertake the survey. I think there was a question asked in terms of support. Yes, support, financial support was provided to our members to take these surveys, because we understand at this time most of the unions and the employees are membership based, so we try to make sure that there is some support provided in that. In totality, in Fiji, we had targeted to reach close to about 24,000 businesses to the Ministry of Employment, which would cover roughly about 280,000 workers. We've managed to reach close to about 20,000 already. In terms of the reach out to the union members, they have reached out to close to about 70% of their members, which represent close to about 2,100 workers, and about 17,000 businesses has been surveyed to date, which represents close to about 73%. Of course, of that, a few days ago, we were asked about the question of the informal and the formal sector, where in the formal sector, we have reached out to close to about 73%, and in the informal sector, 34%. In addition to this, this also contributes to the UN Socioeconomic Assessment. So whatever the findings that we get from this will also contribute to the UN Socioeconomic Assessment. But when the reports are prepared, in the case for Fiji, what we are hoping to do, that the results will also have 3 reports. One will be a workers' report through the unions, one would be the report from the employers, and one will be a government report. And based on that, what's the plan so far is that the recommendations is provided as a tripartite to the government, and also the same recommendations will be provided to the UN for the socio-economic assessment. So far, discussions are on, like I mentioned, discussions are ongoing for the other countries, when we are hoping that in the next few weeks, we are able to launch almost a similar survey on businesses and employment in the other Pacific Island countries. I try to finish off here. I know we are running short of time, but if you have any questions, please do let me know. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Raj. I think it's very interesting that you're concentrating on surveying the employment and business sector, because clearly that's a major part of what is happening across the region, with many people being made unemployed, and that then feeds into the household aspects that is being looked at by our other survey teams. Now, we've come to the end of what was initially the first part of our session this morning. I'd like now to invite the UN agencies in Fiji to explain a bit more about the socioeconomic impact assessments that are being undertaken now, in order to try and coordinate all the activities that are going on with all the different agencies and those that have spoken this morning, as well as the other agencies in the UN system that are also undertaking various surveys around the region. So can I now hand over to the UN system in Fiji to bring us up to date on what's going on there? Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. This is Dinesh, and I think Alex from the Resident Coordinator's Office in APIA, he will also contribute to this presentation. So I've just got a very short presentation. There's a couple of PowerPoint slides which I want to share with with the meeting this morning. But I just wanted to, sort of give a brief, sort of background to this exercise, which we have embarked on. So really, we are looking at the socioeconomic impact assessment of the pandemic in the region. And I think, there's some clear objectives, to this exercise, which is to capture and provide data analysis and evidence of how this pandemic has affected Pacific countries. And I think importantly what we are targeting is the impact on vulnerable groups and people who really have been affected disproportionately by this crisis, which looks at still keep it at the sorry, whoever is assisting me with the slides, keep it on the first one. I'm just giving some background. And the other objective, of course, is to, and I think this is a fundamental part, where we're looking at informing, some of the UN, programming efforts in the country. So there are currently, there are many programs underway. So I think, the impact assessment, will essentially inform, how these programs, can be implemented going forward. If there is a need for, perhaps need to redirect these resources into perhaps other areas, I think this impact assessment will essentially help us do that. And of course, look at some of the policy interventions that governments could consider. And in here we are very mindful of the budget timelines of the countries, and we did a quick mapping of the countries who are in fact announcing their budget in the next couple of months, and I think in the last couple of weeks we've seen Tonga actually finalize their budget, and we're very glad that we've had this high level interaction with the government of Tonga to be able to understand what are some of their needs. I mean, they've obviously announced their budget, but I'm pretty sure the study will come up with some further recommendations which government can look into. And of course there are other countries who are still sort of in the budget consultation phase, and that's what we are targeting, that our work can in fact meaningfully inform some of the strategic interventions that government could consider. And I think the other major objective is to again see how the socioeconomic impact assessment can in fact inform further resource mobilization and opportunities for collaboration with other development partners, with IFIs and the other agencies. So that is the brief sort of background of the exercise. So the couple of slides which I have here, I mean, of course, gives a deep dive in terms of the UN framework and what the UN framework in fact entails. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Okay, so so this is the we are guided the work on the socioeconomic impact assessment. We are guided by the UN SG's framework for immediate socioeconomic response. So this is in fact looking at at a very integrated sort of package. Which is offered by the UN development system to protect the needs and the rights of people living under the duress of the pandemic, with, of course, particular focus on the most vulnerable countries, groups, and people, who risk being left behind. The next slide, please. So in terms of the salient features of the framework, so this is, it's comprised of 5 streams of work, which is connected by a strong environmental sustainability and gender equality imperative to build back better. And so the 5 pillars, if you like, are the first one is ensuring that health services are still available and protecting the health systems. The second pillar looks at helping people cope with the adversity through social protection and the basic services. And the third pillar of this UN framework is protecting jobs, supporting small and medium-sized enterprises and the most vulnerable productive actors. And I think the previous presentation by Raj from ILO in fact did speak to this excuse me, this particular pillar, and how in fact ILO has been able to work with its partners to be able to do a quick and rapid survey in terms of informing these priority areas. The fourth pillar of the UN framework is guiding the necessary surge in the fiscal and the financial stimulus, and really looking at the macroeconomic response and the opportunities for multilateral collaboration. And the final pillar of the UN framework is promoting social cohesion. and in investing in community-led resilience and response systems. And I think this is something, which has become quite apparent, across the region, where people are coming up with, community-led, sort of initiatives, resilience initiatives. And I think this is something which needs to, to be looked at. And really, I mean, if there's, any efforts to perhaps support this, I think that should be done, and we really hope that the study will will pivot towards that. So at the heart of the response lies at the national and the subnational level, which is of course using existing structures. And this work, the socioeconomic impact assessment, this is we've started now, but it's supposed to sort of inform the efforts and the initiatives and strategies for the next 12 to 18 months. That's actually, from a UN planning perspective. The next slide, please. So the next couple of slides, looks at, there's a deep dive on the first pillar, which is looking at the health sector. The next slide looks at protecting people and basic services. We'll gladly share this presentation so you can have a look at that. So can I move on to the 9th slide, please? Thank you. That's the one. So yeah, this is a summary slide in terms of I've just cherry picked on certain sort of areas and really looking at some of the impacts across these 5 pillars, like for example the incidence of poverty, the health crisis, the education crisis, noting that the restrictions have in fact led to school closures, the impact on women and gender-based violence, and how the impact on the cash economy, how that is, in fact affecting, food insecurity and what's the impact. So I think, with this sort of, helicopter view of what's the impact like, I just wanted to sort of present to the regional statisticians who are part of this meeting, that these are some of the the areas, critical areas where we're looking at how the crisis would impact the communities in the region. And I think our experience of having done the socioeconomic impact assessment, of having led this work thus far, is that whilst this was a very rapid exercise, I mean, we were not, agencies were not in fact encouraged. Well, we didn't actually specifically ask agencies to do any field surveys, but we do, see that some agencies have in fact done that, really to capture, what has been the impact. But essentially, we wanted something, which is much more rapid. It builds on the secondary data which we have with the NSOs and at the national level, and I think our engagement thus far with some of the States Office, that has in fact resulted in good sort of collaboration, good exchange of data sets. For example, the exchange of the household income and expenditure, survey data sets, etc. So that's been the sort of the landscape in terms of looking at statistics and how we're wanting to partner with countries. But I think what we also wanted to particularly highlight is that if this is a prolonged, if the region, has a prolonged battle with this crisis, and if we want to sort of, continually sort of monitor cohorts of population and really look at, some of these indicators on education, on health, on poverty, and how we are faring across, these dimensions, then I suppose, there is a lot of opportunity for the National States Office to in fact, be part of this exercise and see how they can lend support, through their own, systems, through their own sort of, survey processes. But I think, if there's anything, beyond this exercise, and there's a need for it, I think, there's room for that, and I think certainly, there can be this conversation, with the UN office, with the resident coordinator's office, in terms of how we can, sort of build capacity, how we can perhaps, resource some of the National States Office, I mean, if they are to engage in this sort of work. And so finally, I think, we have embarked on this regional exercise. So the Fiji RCO is in fact, responsible for 10 countries. So we are looking at a phased approach. In the first phase, we've looked at Fiji, Palau, RMI, Tonga, and Tuvalu. And we have really been sort of, urging our UN colleagues to, to look at all the 5, countries for phase 1. Some agencies have in fact been able to do that, whilst whilst the others, for example, those who prefer to do field surveys, to carry out some primary surveys, they've obviously picked 1 or 2 countries out of the 5. So at this stage, I know we do have some preliminary results, ready for Fiji, and I think the technical team, which has been championing this work, from the RS's office in Fiji, meets tomorrow, and we will discuss, the preliminary results for Fiji and hopefully for some other countries as well. And I think, in terms of, presenting, back to these governments, we're looking at doing this for the next couple of weeks. So that's pretty much, from my side, colleagues, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And just to say that, phase 2, should kick in, from the next month or so, as we look at, deep end analytics for the remainder of the countries. Thanks, and over to you, Alex.
Hello, colleagues. Can you hear me, David?
Yes, carry on, Alex. It's fine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to share experience. I'm an economist with Samoa, UN RCO, Regional Coordinator Office. Basically, actually, right now I'm based in Fiji. I'm kind of stuck in a bula bubble. Travel bubble, cannot get to Samoa, but I'm leading the work on basically 4 countries. This is Samoa, Cook Islands, Niue, and Tokelau. And specifically, I'm actually in charge of socioeconomic impact analysis report for Samoa currently. So I think Nilesh already described quite well the framework for this work, so I'm not going to go into this. What I would like to share with you is some of the lessons learned so far, or I would even say the lessons we keep learning in this process of preparing socioeconomic impact assessment. The first point I want to make is that there is a big gap between deadlines of what we try to achieve through this analysis and basically when the household survey can be collected. We all come from backgrounds of analyzing household survey data, representative data for population, which takes usually a lot of time to collect, also to implement in the field, but also to analyze. And I think one lesson that we're learning is that we just don't have a luxury of waiting specifically for this exercise. Just to give an example, we have to finalize the first draft of socioeconomic impact assessment report before the end of this month, which is basically in 5 days. So one way to deal with that is that we decided that this analysis is going to be a living document, whereby we will try to focus on what we can do, basically what kind of data we can get. Even sometimes it's going to be qualitative rather than quantitative data. And then once more data, more solid data comes in, we will integrate it in the next better versions of the report. The second issue I see is challenges of measuring impacts across such a wide array of development outcomes. We are talking here about health sector, food security, labor markets, social cohesion. I really feel like we try to measure everything pretty much across the whole spectrum of outcomes, and I think it's very difficult to do with one particular or single survey instrument. So I think that's something else. I think we need to be creative here, and this is also we are trying to do for Samoa, which is basically see how we can, where we can pull data from different surveys and different data sources to get a comprehensive picture together. Again, just want to emphasize in this context, again, the importance, it's point number 3, importance of getting quick data, even if we realize that, and I think one way we look at it is that we really try to get data that can at least indicate potential or expected impacts versus actual impacts. So this is again one point I want to mention. And with that in mind, I also want to share our experience of how we approach this the data issues right now. So we decided to have a kind of two-way approach. One is we actually in the process of implementing a rapid assessment survey, which is a web-based service through Google platform. We put together a survey instrument based on experience of our colleagues in PNG. I think it was also, the World Bank was also part of the design. It's a very short online survey of about 40 questions. It's not a representative sample of population, so we have to be very clear about it. But I think, and I will give you an example at the end of, I think we still can learn a lot from these types of surveys, especially in the early stage when we don't have household survey data. The second approach we are taking is that we are basically negotiating with some Bureau of Statistics to implement a proper household survey, which we all realize will take time. But the idea is to use 2018 sample frame for 2018 HIS and randomly draw like about 20-25% of those households that were surveyed at the time, which would give us a sample size of about 1,000 households. So we believe, and again, the issue here I want to mention is that in terms of challenges is that I realize it's actually very difficult to agree on a single survey instrument, and I guess we actually been working in our partners, all UN agencies, that actually makes it, in a way, it makes it more difficult because everybody wants to have the questions in the survey reflecting basically their program priorities. We are actually partnering right now with UNICEF and we will do something along the lines of Mix Plus, I think, survey with multiple stages of data collection, but that has not been finalized yet, or we have not a full agreement with some Bureau of Statistics yet. So that process is in the making, but I'm sure we will have this implemented. So again, a lot of challenges here because everybody wants us to report on impacts, and some things we already know, some things we just think we know, and some potential impacts can be observed on the ground, but we don't have necessarily solid data to report on those. So as a final comment, I just wanted to give example of maybe the usefulness of this web-based tool. For example, we were asking what % of households report decline in income. We get about 33% saying that they lost the loss of income. We also ask to describe the main challenges people are facing. And not surprisingly, some of those include reduced access to income earning opportunities. About 40% of households mention those. Associated to that, 45% report increased level of stress within the household. Very interesting, actually. These two are very important, but they are not the biggest concern expressed. Actually, the biggest concern expressed is education opportunities for children, which is a concern reported by 57% of households. Again, I think it's an example of even though this data is, as I already mentioned, it's not representative of the population, I think it gives some good indication where of the areas we can look further, and I'm sure some of these areas can be confirmed when we do proper proper household survey based on 2018 sample. Actually, quite interesting, just for me to mention also, is that we've been also asking what are the positive things that people experience because of COVID. One response that came with 84% of respondents was actually spending more time together, family time. I guess it's also another way, can also maybe lead to stress as well. But also very important was that more than 50% of households spend less money on non-essential items. So I just wanted to give that example of kind of early evidence we are trying to collect by basically being creative in terms of what's out there, in terms of tools and surveys we can do. And just as a final point, I want to mention that I also learned it's extremely important that we all development partners in statistical office and the World Bank and everybody, we keep sharing the survey instruments we already have. So we are very open about it. I really think it's always helpful for us, especially, for example, we took a survey that was done in PNG and we're able to adapt it quickly to basically some more context and start implementing the survey. And the good thing about this online survey is that basically doesn't cost anything, but it can still provide us with some valuable, even if I would not call it data, I would call it insights into what's happening on the ground. Of course, that does not negate the need of household representative surveys at the population level. And this is where we will be going with the next stage of this exercise. So again, feel free to ask questions. Feel free also to reach to me through email as well, so we could have further correspondence. Thank you very much, colleagues. Over to you.
Thank you very much indeed, Alex. That was a very interesting presentation, and it's interesting too to hear that you have already been getting some insights, as you put it, from the work that you've been doing so far. And I think the analysis that is going to be done by World Bank in PNG and the Solomons will help to reinforce many of those findings that that you are already observing. Now, over the last hour or so, we've heard from 4 of the partners who are already undertaking various activities in a number of countries around the region. And as we move now to the second session of our presentations this morning, I'm going to invite the government statisticians or representatives of the NSOs to speak about some of the issues that they are perceiving in trying to deal with all these different agencies that are now offering assistance to them in various ways through surveys and so on. So what I would like to do is just to ask each of the NSOs that we believe we have on screen with us now to give us an update on a number of issues, and I'll just quickly run through what we would particularly like to hear from you. Firstly is what modifications are you planning to make to your existing data collection plans for the remainder of this year and leading into 2021? This is important so that we can update our collections program that will be presented to the Forum Economic Ministers in a couple of weeks' time. We'd also like to hear from you what knowledge you have of the various surveys that are being planned in your individual countries, and as Offer has already highlighted, what engagement have you had with the various agencies, and what engagement would you like to have in the future? Clearly, it's really important that that you, as the NSOs in the individual countries, are fully engaged in any such survey activities that are taking place in your countries. The ILO survey, it would be interesting to know too whether you have been involved in the planning of the business surveys, because obviously whilst it's really important that you're involved in the household surveys where there is actual confidential information being collected from individual households, it's equally important to know what coordination there is in terms of the work that's going on around business surveys as well. We'd also be keen to hear from you on any other statistical activities that are taking place currently in your individual countries on the socio-impact assessments that were mentioned by Nilesh. And importantly too, I think, is to remind you that there is a lot of administrative data that can be collected and used for the monitoring of the economic situation. And I think we reminded you a few days ago of the list of potential administrative data that we know is being collected by governments that could be used for economic monitoring. And this was shared with you, and we will in fact be sharing with you the results of some of the information that we've been able to collect from various websites and government departments in the next couple of days. And we'd also like to invite you to ask any questions and present any questions on the presentations that we've heard so far. So having said that, Ipia, perhaps I can turn to you first and ask if you'd like to lead off in presenting on behalf of Nauru and as head of the HOPS on your observations so far of the presentations and the discussions we've had. Ipia, are you still there? Ipia? Hello, Taggy, are you there? Can I ask you if you would like to make the first intervention?
Kirana from the Cook Islands. Can you hear me?
Oh yes, hi Jim. Yeah, good to hear from you.
Yes. Yep. Taggy's caught up in a bit of electoral work, so I'll be representing the Cook Island Stats Office in this discussion. So from us, the COVID has had little impact on our plans for our census, which is still targeted for the 1st of December 2021. So in terms of impact, I think it's just us looking at the different modes that we can use to collect the data. We might have to have some contingency plans if right now we're COVID-free, but if COVID's here, then we have to explore the full range of capabilities that software survey solutions offers. So whether that's CATI or the Kawi, whether we look at web-based interviews or telephone-based interviews as a plan B. So other than that, we don't have any major collections planned, other than possibly what we're looking at today in terms of a rapid response. So in terms of our interactions with other agencies, we've bought into that framework, and the biggest thing we're investing in is the health first. So most of our staff involvement in COVID has been assisting the Ministry of Health with their data collection, data management, and training of staff to respond and to do the monitoring and the surveillance activities out in the communities. This pandemic has exposed that while they've been very good with their med-tech technology, which is basically collecting administrative data, they've had very little experience in terms of field collections. So we were heavily involved in the health aspect of COVID. In terms of socioeconomic assessments, that's been a bit more fragmented, I guess. Everyone's sort of operating in their own little silos. We've heard people going out and doing ad hoc surveys or just ad hoc data collection here and there, but haven't really seen any results. So that's probably something we'd like to work a bit more closely. So part of our purpose for tuning into this session is to get a better picture, get a broader understanding of what the standardized tool is being recommended by the region, and we can present that to the key stakeholders and let them decide how we can roll out, I guess, a single data collection method that will suit most people's needs in the country and ideally in the region as well. I think that's the general overview from the Cook Islands. I'll give more time for our other colleagues in the region. If there's nothing else, that's it from us in the Cook Islands.
Thank you very much indeed, Jim. It's very interesting to hear that you've been fully engaged in the health aspects of the COVID situation, even though Cook Islands has managed to avoid much in the way of the infections and so on. But it's important that obviously that a lot of data is collected on the health circumstances. But I understand that that you have been affected quite badly in terms of the economic situation with the loss of tourists coming to the Cook Islands, which is an important part of your economy. Is there any insight that you can give us on that?
Firstly, I'll comment on our heavy involvement in health. It just so happens that we have also got a dengue fever epidemic, so contact tracing was quite important, even though we're COVID-free. So that's probably justified our heavy involvement. And yes, you're right as well in terms of we've had possibly one flight every second week, and that's to either fly out trapped tourists or bring back some of our repatriated residents. And the tourist industry is in a bad state. So our government, in terms, it's not really related to statistics, but they've come out with I guess packages for unemployment, for I guess salary top-ups up to the minimum wage, free opportunities to study at our national tertiary education upskill, and just basically pouring millions of dollars into a stimulus package to try and keep us over until the borders open again. But we're not too involved in that right now. That's our other division, the economic planning side.
Okay, thanks very much indeed, Jim. It's very interesting to hear what the government is doing on the social protection side, because I think this is going to become increasingly important across the region. But thanks for that. Could I now ask Biliami in Tonga? Could you please give us an insight in what's happening in Tonga? Thank you. Viliami, are you there? Are you able to share your experiences and observations so far? Perhaps you're still muted, Viliami. It seems we're having a bit of trouble getting Viliami online. And Andy in Vanuatu, can I ask you to let us have your thoughts on what's been discussed so far?
Hi, David, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Carry on, please.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for organizing SPC and EPF organizing this this meeting, and it's good to at least get an idea of what's really happening within the region. And I guess most of us are not speaking because we are not we don't have that much experience with telephone interviews. It's a new era. And COVID has really directed us to invest and look for alternatives, which we believe is the way forward now. But I'm very curious on sampling approach. Sampling approach, and especially we're hearing from Kristen, they're still biased. So if that is something we can look further into and allow the methods board to have at least some way forwards into sampling, the sampling itself. I proposed Vanuatu was also requested to be part alongside PNC and Solomons for the World Bank survey. We declined simply because it's an unknown era for us, and we rather learn more from countries who have conducted telephone interviews. I'm sure the Pacific is not in that era, so probably the European countries. So what I'm trying to say is we don't have that much experience now. So therefore, we'd like to listen and we'd like to learn from the experts themselves. And I'm sure, like Christian has mentioned, they have done telephone surveys with many other countries already. So the experience learned from them is what we would like being shared to all members to see advantages and disadvantages of doing such surveys. In terms of what the current plan now with our data collection, there is no amendments yet to the census plan for November this year. The census is progressing as it is happening. We're currently piloting the questionnaire. But yes, like I agree with Jim, the Census Steering Committee has already decided that there is a plan B, which is if Vanuatu does get a case, we have repatriates coming in. They are all under lockdown for 14 days. So if there's something comes up, then of course we will definitely have to consider. So the plan B for us now is to move census. I'm seeing an invitation from, I think it's UN. Also a meeting on census and COVID for next week on Monday. So that'd be very interesting to be, to have also to listen and hear the debates, what's happening, and because COVID has really affected most of us, especially countries who are planning to do a census this year. We have heard from UNFPA that some countries have postponed their censuses. China is delaying its, Ghana also delaying theirs. So this it's very uncertain. Huh? So thank you again, David, for organizing SPC for organizing this meeting to allow members to discuss. But I would like to ask if we can consider the option of having a Pacific survey, having 3 stratas, and whether that is an option visible we can take rather than allowing individual countries to do the same surveys. I'm also aware now that there is a cluster, a food security cluster survey. I have not been made aware of that, and we plan to be happening in Vanuatu. So I hope to get in touch with the World Food Advisors and team to see how the survey is currently undertaken. We have done an economic impact assessment. NSO was part with our macroeconomics team, and they have done the assessment. Vanuatu not only is threatened by COVID-19, but we also had a Category 5 cyclone, tropical cyclone Harold. So most resources and priorities have also been shifted quite a bit again. So this, as part of that, we part of an macroeconomics assessment looking at the impacts, the economic loss and damages from TCRO and hopefully COVID as well. And this assessment has really helped our ministry, especially the Ministry of Finance, in coming up with its economic stimulus package to support what is really happening now is in terms of especially COVID. So data, I would also strongly say that, data is really vital at this point in time, very crucial, but again, we are very much open to the idea of telephone interviews, but I can't comment further on that because of the limited experience we have concerning this area. David, I would like to give time to the other members as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Andy. I think you've raised a couple of important points there. One, you mentioned about the need for these phone surveys, the methodology to be reviewed by the Methods Board. And this is something that will be on the agenda for the next meeting of the Pacific Methods Board, which we're planning to convene early next month. So this is something that will be discussed, and it will be an opportunity then for the Methods Board to consider a number of these questions that that obviously concern you in terms of how the phone surveys will be conducted and the methodologies used. Hopefully by then we will have a clearer indication from the World Bank on the results of the surveys in PNG and the Solomon Islands, and we hope that as a consequence of the information that we get from them, that this will help to allay the concerns that many NSOs, many government statisticians and NSOs around the region obviously have at the moment in getting involved in this this new innovative and at least in the Pacific, untried survey system. So we're really hopeful that we'll get some positive feedback from the World Bank, and that will help to encourage a number of the government statisticians in the region to take part in the surveys. I think the other point that you mentioned was around the need for coordination and to keep you as the NSO informed of any surveys that are being conducted by other agencies. Although perhaps they may not be directly involving NSO staff, I think it's important to remind all our partner agencies who are listening in today that they really should make sure that the NSO is kept informed, because the data that is collected may well fall under the mandate of the NSO. So it's important that they are engaged in any survey development to make sure that those surveys are being conducted in a way that meets the standards that are required in individual countries, and that the data collected is not, as it were, misrepresented in any way in the future if it's not nationally represented. So I would just ask all partners who are listening in to take note of the concerns raised there by Andy. I wonder if we can now move on, and is Viliami, are you available now to let us know how things are in Tonga?
Thank you, David. I'm sorry, I was in and out because there is other physical meeting that is happening here in Tonga.
It's great to have you on board, Viliami.
But I will make some comment tomorrow. Tomorrow I will let. But for now, here in Tonga, we are being approached by government in so many facets to look at how much contribution that we can make in terms of the impact of the COVID. We have just released a preliminary results for mix, and through mix we have identified what are the indicators that are of helpful for the impact of the COVID. For example, the internet connections for Ministry of Education and the coverage of people who have the facility like computer. If it happens that there will be no schooling via the mode of physical teaching, then they can be able to see the plan which groups of the islands are going to be use the different means of the remote the learning from home as an example. We also have given results to the WASH group in terms of for example, sanitations or the running, the washing hands and stuff like that. But we will have an enterprise survey, and also a business survey, and also the household. We are looking at different things that have been on board. We are looking at Mexico also. We are looking at Australia, United Kingdom that I've been sharing on the screen. We're also looking closely at what, and we'll be learning more on what the World Bank is doing with PNG and also Solomon Islands. And we will be possibly discussing more with Kristen on but I think contextually for countries on the NSOs, or to really scope out what they really need during this era of uncertainty, and to make sure that they will use the best possible tool in terms to scope out the impacts of the COVID, which is very uncertain. But this kind of dialogue is very helpful. I will make some comment tomorrow, but for now, thank you for the many presentations, and I'd like us to see if you can share the presentation that has been done so far, and of course the lesson learned from these two pilot countries will be definitely helpful for the rest of us. Thank you, David.
Thanks very much indeed, Viliami. And yes, there will be plenty of opportunity tomorrow for further discussion once we've had time to reflect overnight on what's been said today. But let's just move on now, and I can see that we have the Samoa Bureau online. And Leota, are you there? Would you like to be the one speaking from Samoa? I understand that Ali Muamua is not available, but perhaps you'd like to share your experiences. Thanks.
Well, thank you, David. Can you hear us?
Yes, carry on. Thanks.
All right. Well, it's unfortunate Ali Muamua is attending the Parliament meeting. So I will speak on our behalf. We also have our other colleagues, senior managers here, Mr. Benjamin and also Edith, who can also help out with comments from us. But based on what we've been discussing today, there have been some adjustments in terms of the our survey. As you may be aware that our agriculture census team is out in the field, which started early in the year. It's just unfortunate that we got stopped by the measles in the beginning, and then later on with the COVID. And now it's the 4th week since we started again, and I'm sure there will be information that can be related to the COVID impact collected on that survey. Secondly, there is a survey that we've been part of it. It's just unfortunate that we don't have that much resources, and it's being conducted by the MCL and the tripartite, as mentioned by the ILO, which is the Chamber of Commerce as well as the workers' union, with the assistance of one of the TA, or the technical assistants, which is there to assist the survey. So what we've known is that the field work is still ongoing, and according to the schedule, I think it was more on the 2nd July for the report to come out. We feel that there could be a delay in getting that result. So we only took part in terms of the questionnaire design as well as preparing questions, which our colleague Mr. Benjamin was heavily involved. There have been other surveys that were proposed, but as you may be aware that we're also having a lot of, as part of the stimulus package here, so we were forced to adjust other surveys so that we can also have the listing, the updates of our household list, which is proposed to be starting in the late July, and this will be the basis for our census, and it's part of the common stimulus package sort of development. In terms of businesses, as I mentioned, there's the survey conducted by the Chamber of Commerce as well as the workers' union, with the assistance of the TA. There was also a component of household being surveyed on that, and I think we can share the questionnaires in which are being used for this survey. And I think we're following the structure and also some of the questions that were initiated by the ILO. In terms of other economic indicators, yesterday we released the quarterly GDP estimate for March, and well, if anyone is interested, it's already available on our website, which we already see a downturn in terms of the economy, and which is more a leading indicator of what's happening in Samoa at this point in time, as well as the previous quarter. There are also other reports which includes the government finance statistics and the formal employment statistics, which David has mentioned the fact that these are very, very important indicators or early indicators so that we can distribute to get some sort of the leading information before we really get a full sort of big picture of the impact of the COVID. I think all our other sort of short-term indicators are also being disseminated, like the CPI as well as the trade statistics, which are already being available on our website. So That's where we are at this point in time. But my other colleagues can add to what I've said in terms of the developments in the Bureau. But thank you.
Thank you very much, Leota. Perhaps we can invite either Edith or Ben to add to what you've already said, if they would wish to.
Hi, David. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, yes. Carry on, Ben. Great to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Hi, everyone.
Sorry, Ben, we've lost you.
I think he's muted himself.
Okay, Ben,
can you guys hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. I think Leota has covered everything, but two points I want to raise in relation to the COVID-19 socioeconomic rapid assessment. I think, as mentioned by Alex, there was an online survey by the UN with regards to the COVID-19 rapid assessment. And I think Alex has given a fair idea of the overall preliminary finding of that survey. It was circulated to the Bureau by the GS, and I think there were some issues with regard to that survey as mentioned by Alex. And the second point I want to raise in relation to the COVID-19 rapid assessment, I think as mentioned by Philip from UNICEF with regards to the Mix Plus, currently as we speak right now, we are currently doing a virtual workshop conducted by UNICEF, I think, about the data interpretation of the results of the mix. And from the results of the mix, we'll be doing a Mix Plus in relation to the COVID-19. And currently it was requested by UNICEF, I think, for the data to be sent over so that they can design a questionnaire for a proper COVID-19 rapid assessment survey. So those are the two main issues that wanted to raise. Just to add on with the UN, the point I mentioned before with regards to Alex, it was a online survey by a UN survey team. So I think was compiled by, I'm not sure, but I think was compiled by maybe Alex's and his colleagues. That's it for the time being, and thank you all. Thank you, David. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks very much indeed, Ben. Edith, would you like to add anything to what Leota and Ben have just contributed?
Hi, everyone. Not much. Thanks, Leota, for giving most of the information. The only thing that I wanted to share is that we've been approached by many UN agencies about these COVID impact assessments. And they have a lot of time constraints and things like that, but we have not been able to coordinate or agree on what the questionnaire would be, the mode of, there's UNICEF offering something, and then the resident coordinator is trying to put together all the UN, what they would like to have in this one survey. And so I think with the negotiations with Ali Momoa, because we came up with budgets and work plans and tried to incorporate what they wanted. The last I heard was that they were taking the questionnaire from the HEIS 2018 and take relevant parts of that to be the rapid socioeconomic assessment. That would be like the base questionnaire that they were trying to have. So at this time, we haven't really been able to coordinate. I guess some are going on their own, but as far as SBS's contribution, I think that still hasn't been established or been confirmed as how we would approach that. But there are many different ideas, and all these presentations that have been presented have shown different ideas and how you'd want to approach. But that's what I want to share as far as I've been involved in the negotiations with this COVID impact assessments. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Edith. I think again that's highlighted the point that was made by Andy a few minutes ago about the importance of all agencies coordinating with the NSO to make sure that the surveys are coordinated and don't cause, as it were, confusion or whatever at the country level. So I think this is something that we can take up again tomorrow when we have a more round table discussion. So now if we can move on, I believe that Arista is online in Kiribati. So could I ask Arista to make her contribution, please? Yeah, we seem to be having a bit of trouble communicating with Arista, but if she manages to connect, she has problems with her bandwidth in Kiribati. But I also see that Kimray is online in Niue. So Kimray, would you like to make a contribution to this this session, please?
Yep. Hello, everybody. Hello, Dave.
Hi, Kimray. Yeah, we can hear you fine.
Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I was a bit late. I was involved in another matter, particularly the first meeting of the House for the new government. So I was not in the office this morning when you people started, but now I'm here and I have listened in to some of the comments that we have done already. What's happening in Niue is like what also happening in the Pacific countries who are trying to remain COVID-19 free. And we are hoping, because that's the other responsibility that I have. I have to keep the country free of COVID-19. And but otherwise, the other responsibility of looking after the statistics of Niue, we retain or maintain the production of the the periodicals, which is including the CPI, the visitors, and also the IMTS. Not with not the national accounts now and the ESS, because we normally do it with the help of BEFTEC, and because of the travel restrictions, we cannot be able to bring in someone from BEFTEC to help us on that one. But on the CPI, we are facing the problem of having the goods, or not the goods that we used to see mainly in the shops, but we see the decrease of the numbers, or none of them in our CPI lists. And also the number of visitors have gone right down, almost only to residents visiting Niue. We have no choice at all. But the big surveys, like the agriculture census, we're supposed to be running the agriculture census now, but because of the COVID-19 and the impacts of it, we have postponed it until later on, maybe towards the third quarter of this year, or maybe postpone it till next year. because we have to have confidence of the workers and also the respondents that will not be they will be protected by not having COVID-19 with them. So it's just that's how government feels, that we postpone it till everything is in normal, and then we'll start our agricultural census. And on the same token, I have talked with health about the mix and steps, because they were talking about the mix doing with UNDP, and they're hoping to do that at the end of this year, but now it's postponed. I have to talk to them and postpone it till later, maybe next year. And with the steps, they were going to do it with WHO, which is scheduled for next year. But again, that will be moved over to 2022, I think. But otherwise, most of the things over here, everybody is well and fine, and the borders are still closed. About the rapid assessment survey and the UN COVID-19 socioeconomic impact assessments, we are not keen on participating on that one, unfortunately, because we are trying to do what we are doing anyway. And that's for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much indeed for bringing us up to date on what's going on in Niue, Kimray. It's very kind. I was interested in one of the comments that you made about the difficulties that you're having in collecting some of the data that you need for your core indicators, such as the CPI, and this may be something that can be discussed more widely tomorrow when we have our plenary session, because I suspect that this is something that may well be happening with some of the other NSOs as well, that data that you would normally expect to be able to collect without any difficulty is no longer available because of shortages in the shops or lack of transport, the international transport and so on. So it's an interesting issue that has obviously come up there, and we also note the delays that may be occurring in some of your surveys until things have cleared up. So perhaps now we could move on, and Arista, are you online now? Arista, if you are online, you're on mute. No, it seems. Oh, Arista, yes, please. Let us have your views from Kiribati. Thank you.
At last. What I have here, we have the census. It's still going on, but we have to change a lot of plans. Most of it we have to plan early, and although it costs us a bit more, but we have to move ahead because there is a lot of uncertainty with the air flights locally, and then the equipment. We have ordered some of like the tablets from overseas, but takes time to arrive. So most of our plans we have to move ahead and train earlier, but I guess we have to sort of do the training, and then right before the census we have to conduct more like what we call it, like a refreshing training, so that what we have done earlier would be refreshing the minds of our interviewers and supervisors. But at the moment we are recruiting our supervisors and interviewers and planning that we conduct an early training, because we have now the CAPI training and then the questionnaire training. Yeah, that's what we are doing right now with the census. It's still going ahead. So far, we're still going. We haven't come to a halt yet, but with the new government coming in, I think there will be a lot of changes. And considering that maybe Fiji will be opening the flights, then maybe things will be much easier. I'm not really saying something and promising something, so we're just getting our hopes high. But at the moment, we still plan with a lot of risk management planning. That's what we are right now. There's only one activity that we are doing. It's only the census. And I think that's what where we are now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for bringing us up to date on that, Arista. I think clearly in Kiribati, because you're sort of one step removed from the rest of the world, so to speak, that you're dependent on having the flights to Fiji, and therefore are somewhat dependent on opening up international connections in a way that perhaps is not affecting many of the other countries, being one step removed. So we wish you well and hope that you will soon be able to get the supplies that you need and get all your statistical collections fully underway. Kelly, I think you're online, and I guess you're very much in the same situation as Kiribati, being one step removed from a major airport. So perhaps I could ask Kelly, would you like to contribute, please?
Thank you, David, and mahalo everyone, and thank you for organizing these meetings. I think it's very timely, and I will say a few things about what's going on in Tokelau. At the moment, we do not have any major statistical activity planned for the remaining of the year. We did have highs planned for last year. We actually have to defer that activity to some other time. Late last year, around December last year, we're fortunate we managed to conduct a population count for the purpose of conducting our general election earlier this year. Our only main activity going on at the moment is our CPI, and we're very fortunate that we are actually conducting our CPI at the moment as it used to be, because we are based here in Samoa. The person or the staff member looking after the CPI is based here with me, and we actually liaise with village staff or village stores on a regular basis through emails and follow up with telephone calls if required. At the moment, there is was experienced by all Pacific Islands the impact of this pandemic, and Tokelau is is in the same boat, and we at some time find it quite difficult to get the information from our village stores on time. So that is the only time our CPI officer will have to seek my help if there is a delay in the process of getting information from Tokelau. So that's when I came in, and I have to send an email or speak with the village general manager for seeking their support in facilitating this part of the process. But otherwise, everything is normal as it used to be, because of the fact that we're based in Samoa, and this is the normal process that we follow. We send emails and follow by phone calls if required. Regarding the monitoring survey, the phone monitoring survey, and the presentations by development partners, it's been very interesting listening to those presentations, and it gives the urge to participate in this kind of survey, because of the intention of this survey is to produce information that will help our national institutions in terms of decision making. And I would like to look at the possibility. In the past, we've been liaising with Statistics New Zealand in terms of what I've noticed in the amount of trade and goods going into Tokelau since the COVID-19 started. And I was wondering if we can look at a way of looking at the trades going in, the kind of goods going into Tokelau ever since the beginning of this pandemic. It is a survey and a piece of work that I'm interested in, and I've been discussing with Statistics New Zealand. But otherwise, Tokelau, I am very interested in exploring and looking at these surveys conducted by our development partners, and how Tokelau can actually be supported and take part in these surveys. Administration, information and data, actually the Tokelau Statistics Office hasn't been taking much active role in this area, but we've actually seen the need for us to take a much more active and leading role in this area. And I've been in contact with some of our department directors and head of departments to, in a way of us to share this information, and for us to be copied and allowed to get this information so that we can put it in a way that we can actually share with our decision makers, especially those in the academic field and our partners. And I think that's all I can share at the moment. But like what I said, I very much looking forward to an opportunity to explore with partners in a way that Tokelau can be included and be part of these surveys. Thank you very much, David, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed, Kelly. Some interesting perspective from you, being based in Samoa and trying to manage the statistics for Tokelau. It's quite a challenge, I'm sure. I appreciate that we are now somewhat over our scheduled time, but I think it's important that we do allow all the government statisticians to give their perspective, so that we have a framework for our plenary session that will take place tomorrow morning. I'd like to call on Ipia now in Nauru. I hope that you're online, Ipia.
Hello, David.
Great stuff, great stuff. Off you go then, Ipia, thanks.
Yep. Got temporarily disconnected there, that connection. So yeah, I'll just go through the list that your team sent around. So firstly, I think there's a lot of modifications with our data collection plans. As you know, we're supposed to be out in the field by now with the mix, but we've had to delay that because of the travel restrictions from our technical partners in UNICEF. We're probably going to have to delay our census and as well as our heist to 2021, 2022. Sorry, but I guess my main question with the model heist approach would be, how would that change now if say because that was supposed to be a 1 year enumeration period, right? So that'll be my question. The other question on progressing the current mix activities on Nauru would be, is there a possibility of online training, so through a similar platform such as this one, for us to be able to progress our survey activities regarding the mix? Second one would be on the knowledge of the rapid assessment. We are still currently learning at the moment about the issues and what the experiences are from the other countries. So we're still interested in learning some more on those. Plus Nauru has its own COVID-19 task force. So it may be possible that if COVID-19 does end up landing on our shores, that task force will take over that role of doing the rapid assessment survey with the assistance of the NSO. But the good thing, it hasn't yet. So we're still trying to prepare ourselves for the eventual outcome if that happens. So at the moment, I think it's only been UNICEF that we've been involved in when it comes to our current survey activities, and we're still in contact with them. We've spoken to Philip through email about the possibility of piloting a rapid assessment or the COVID the Mix Plus, but that is still in the pipeline. I mean, that's still under discussion. As I said, maybe the task force will take up that role in the future. What we're seeing at the moment, what Chokolo and probably you are experiencing, is the impact of shipments of trade. As you all know, most of our small islands, depend a lot on imports. So that's impacted a lot on the inflation side of things. So it's something that we want to look into. We want to look into some more and strengthen possibility of administrative data collection system, especially for monitoring that aspect. So I think on those points that were raised here, I think pretty much covered all of them at the moment. But yes, I think because Nauru is still concentrated side of things, particularly the leading indicators. We want to see what the leading indicators are for COVID-19, just to prepare ourselves for the eventual for the possibility that it would end up on our shores. But at the moment, I think we'd want to set up a framework, a database framework here through the use of our administrative data. I think that's mostly it for me. But as I said, we've had to change our survey schedules a bit, move it around a bit, just to accommodate these travel restrictions. Oh, and the other thing is just probably with the GDP estimates and economic statistics. Yeah, we've had the similar problems through getting our experts in, similar to experts from PIFTAC. So we're trying to work remotely with PIFTAC by supplying them the information, and then they'll work remotely from their office. Dave?
Yes, Ipia. Yeah, we lost you for a few seconds there, but I think you're back again.
So you didn't hear all that, or was I talking too fast?
I think you were talking too fast for the bandwidth, but you're back on again now. So carry on, please.
Yeah. So which part did you miss? All of it?
The bit you were saying about collecting the economic data and working with PIFTAC.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's an area we want to improve in terms of our administrative information. Administrative data, because of the impact of trade and how it's impacted on the price of goods, because of the travel restrictions or whatever that are imposed on the shippers, on the shipping lines. So that's something that we want to look into some more through strengthening our administrative data or whatever. I think that's it.
Okay, thanks very much, Ipia. That's another useful insight in the difficulties of working in an isolated environment. I see that Alex has raised his hand. Was there something that you particularly wanted to comment on, Alex?
Hello, David. Just wanted to reflect quickly on 2 points, if I may.
Yes, carry on.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting comment about CPI, and there was actually interesting study done in the United States this year already, I think by Harvard, where they actually claim that the official CPI for United States is no longer reflecting the price changes because the composition of the consumption basket has changed so much. I think it would be really interesting to monitor that situation in the Pacific. Second comment was just my quick reply to our colleagues from Samoa Bureau of Statistics. We actually very close to approach them again about the survey instrument, and I think actually they raised a very important point that I actually forgot to mention when I was talking, and that is exactly that as UN Regional Coordination Office, we actually trying to work with UN agencies to prevent them bombarding individually start office with different survey requests. So that's exactly the role we are trying to achieve, where we basically ask them to come to us first and coordinate with us before they go individually to Bureau of Statistics. So in a way, we're trying to help diminish the level of bombardment, but I think it's something that probably state offices in many countries face. So people want to reflect on that as well. Would be interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thanks very much, Alex. Yes, I think that's a very important point that again that you've raised. Offa, I can see that you've also raised your hand. A very quick point from you.
Yeah, very quick point. As chair of the Methods Board, States New Zealand, Vince is not here today, but it's very important that that these issues raised today are discussed at the Methods Board. In particular, the coordination and also the respondent burden. I also want to inform the meeting that States New Zealand is supporting Tokelau NSO, Kele, on the CPI collection at this point in time. And we are looking particularly to the point that he raised about some of the items are missing from their basket, and we will do the same for Niue, and we're happy to share the finding that we have after we have supported these two member countries. And finally, I just want to suggest to ask the Pacific NSO to send through their feedback via email, because the technology may not work well for them. Thank you.
Thanks, Offa. Yeah, some interesting points there. And just as an aside, and this is something that we can perhaps discuss a bit further tomorrow, I understand that ABS is also providing some assistance to a number of countries on their CPIs. And I see Andrew is online, or was online anyway, and maybe he can speak to that tomorrow when we have our plenary session. I think we are now well over time, and I thank you all for staying online and listening to this, but I think it's been a very useful session to allow our NSOs around the region to share their views and for all of us really, to be brought up to date with the issues that everyone is facing and the challenges and the surveys that are being either conducted right now or being planned for the future, and highlighting the importance of coordination. We will be reconvening tomorrow at the same time, that's 8:30 Noumea time, and we'll have a plenary session there where we can have a much more freely flowing discussion of a number of the points that have been raised today and issues that have been raised. So before we close, again, I'd just like to ask Ipia as the HOPS chair whether he has any closing thoughts for today and any pointers for perhaps what we should be thinking about overnight to raise tomorrow. So Ipia, back to you for any final thoughts.
Oh yes, thank you, David. I think just my final thoughts on these issues is, I think when we wrap up tomorrow, or we start off the discussions tomorrow, I think we also have to start thinking about our next 10-year survey activities as well. Survey activities including what we're currently experiencing now. So when we plan, when we're thinking ahead, we should start thinking also about our regional plans and how this experience now, or this current environment now, will have an impact on how we approach things in the next 10 years as well. So collectively, we can start addressing that now. So that, to me, I think this discussion today will probably open up a few issues that we would probably did not consider in the previous plan, and which we will need to start thinking about incorporating some of these changes and approaches in our next 10-year plan for all of us, individually as countries and also as one region. So that's my final thoughts, and I'd like to thank everyone as well for contributing to today. I think it's been a good day. It's been a successful day in sharing our experiences, and thank you to the presenters as well for shedding some light on some of our uncertainties. So that's it for me, David. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Ipia. I think that what it has shown is the real importance of statistics in the current disaster emergency situation, and the importance of having up-to-date statistics on hand as we need them. And I think this is something again that we can dwell on a little tomorrow. So thanks very much indeed to everybody who's participated today. I think Apelli just wants to say a few words before we finally close.
Yeah, thank you all for your participation in the very useful discussions. One thing that we are monitoring closely is the latest information for the monthly or quarterly statistics that's coming out of your various offices, because that's the latest we can have. Trade statistics, CPI, tourism arrivals, and then all the other information that it is produced on a regular basis. So this is something that we are relying on at the moment to monitor the impact of COVID. So please, we're hearing some very promising and very good feedback from Samoa. They are providing their numbers on a timely basis, and we hope that we could get the same from the other agencies as well to help us in our monitoring work that we need to send out to our users. So thank you once again for your participation, and look forward to tomorrow.
Thank you very much indeed, Apeli, for those closing words. So thank you all again for participating today. It's been a long session, but a very interesting session. And we will reconvene again tomorrow morning at the same time. And we'll have a plenary session then where we'll give the opportunity to all participants to share their views, thoughts, and particularly, as Ipia has said, the way forward, because we are coming to the end of the current 10-year TIPS period, and we do need to think very seriously about where statistics needs to go in the region over the coming decade. So that is something that I think can be a focus for our thoughts overnight, and we look forward to you all joining us again for the second half of this important workshop or session tomorrow. So thank you all very much indeed, and we look forward to speaking with you again in the morning.